Good afternoon. Welcome back. Please remember to turn off your cell phones. And we're going to start this afternoon with the presentation of the Society's awards, 5 of them. This is not an every meeting occurrence by any means. This is in recognition, of course, of the fabulous people we're going to honor, but also of our own 275th anniversary. Some of these awards they're given very judiciously, and some of them have not been given for many years. So we'll start with the Jacques Barzun Prize in Cultural History, which was established in 1993 by a former student of Professor Barzun's. The prize is awarded annually to the author whose book exhibits distinguished work in American or European cultural history. And Michael Wood, chair of the prize selection committee, will present this year's award.
The recipient of the 2018 Jacques Barzun Prize in Cultural History is Katherine Gallagher, in recognition of her book, Telling It Like It Wasn't, an account of factual imagination in history and fiction. Telling It Like It Wasn't is a subtle and closely argued study of instances of counterfactual history in Europe and America, beginning with the moment when imagining alternative pasts ceased to be the rhetorical exercise it had long been and became a way of thinking about the complexities of causality and real-time possibility. Professor Gallagher is not concerned to refute reasonable criticisms of the counterfactual mode, only to show that its long-term development and motivations, these are her words, might give us insight into our ways of making history meaningful. For her, the connections among science fiction, alternate history, and historical activism are enduring not because they solve problems, but because they destabilize solutions. At one point, history itself, at least in its political uses, becomes the preservation of alternatives. And, I quote now again, counterfactuality, far from being opposed to actual history, seems rather a crucial mode of imagining its vitality, consequences, and ongoing significance. It actually becomes history's champion. From Professor Gallagher's chapters on 18th century philosophy, military history, a great ground of counterfactual thought, and modern American and British fiction, we see again and again how what never happened can feel very real, sometimes more real than what did happen. The resulting book is not a case does not offer a case for confusing the real and the imaginary, or indeed refusing to see the difference between them. It does make a case for not occupying, as we so often do, a standpoint from which we can see neither clearly. Katherine Gallagher, now emerita, is the former Ida May William J. Eggers Jr. Chair in English at the University of California, Berkeley. It is my great pleasure to present the 2018 Jacques Barzun Prize in Cultural History to her.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the Society for this. I'm thrilled to receive this award. I always thought that in an alternate reality, I would have been a historian. I'm trained as a literary critic, and most of my books are classified as literary criticism. So then when I woke up and found that I'd actually won a prize in cultural history, I thought, oh, it happened. I've done it already. So thank you so much again. And especially this is thrilling because the panel of judges was composed of a trio that I find just so admirable, such wonderful writers themselves, Michael Wood and Robert Pippin and David Hollinger. So special thanks to them. Thank you.
Dr. Judson Dolan, a prominent Philadelphia physician and outstanding figure in medical research, left the bulk of his estate to the American Philosophical Society in the 1930s as an endowment to be used to support research in clinical medicine. The prize recognizes outstanding achievement in clinical investigation, particularly patient-oriented research, and Clyde Barker, chair of the selection committee, will present the prize.
The recipient of the 2018 Judson Dolan Prize for Outstanding Achievement in Patient-Oriented Clinical Investigation is Kieran Musunuro in recognition of his work discovering and therapeutically targeting cardiovascular disease genes. He has discovered and characterized novel genes involved in coronary artery disease and has pioneered the use of genome editing tools to study genes in human stem cells and to develop vaccinations against cardiovascular disease. Dr. Musunuro has pioneered the use of genome editing tools to probe the mechanisms of disease. His laboratory was the first to develop an efficient platform to use genome editing tools to genetically modify human pluripotent stem cells. He's demonstrated the superior efficiency of CRISPR-Cas9 to previous types of genome editing tools to study a variety of disease-related genes and gain crucial insights into their functions. The approaches demonstrated in his laboratory are now used by many laboratories around the world to study a wide variety of diseases. Kieran Musunuro received a PhD in biomedical sciences at Rockefeller University, an MD at Weill Cornell Medical College, and an MPH in epidemiology at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He's an associate professor of medicine at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm pleased to present the Judson Dolan Prize for Outstanding Achievement in Patient-Oriented Clinical Investigation to Dr. Kieran Musunuro.
So grateful for this wonderful honor from the American Philosophical Society. And something that's distinctive about this prize, I noted, was that it was intended for recipients who are still early in their career, which is a fairly unusual thing. And I'm only about a decade into this effort, this very ambitious effort to prevent and maybe even someday eradicate cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 cause of death worldwide, even in the poorest countries on Earth. It is going to be the global health challenge of the 21st century. And as all of you in the room can appreciate, in an academic career, there are many trials and tribulations, setbacks, obstacles. I'm still in the thick of it, being only a decade into my career. And even a little bit of affirmation, a pat on the back, can go a long way. And so to receive this incredible honor at this time in my career, not only besides being very validating, it's also very reassuring that I made the right decision, I think, to commit myself to this career, and I'm hopefully going to have at least a few more decades left to go, but the scope of the problem is such that it's not going to be one person, it's not going to be one career. I expect the fight will go on long after I'm gone. So I'm very grateful for this, and I hope I can validate this with the work that's yet to come. Thank you.
The Carl Spencer Lashley Award was established in 1957 by a gift from Dr. Lashley, a member of the Society and a distinguished neuroscientist and neuropsychologist. His entire scientific life was spent in the study of behavior and its neural basis. Lashley's famous experiments on the brain mechanisms of learning, memory, and intelligence helped inaugurate the modern era of integrative neuroscience and the Lashley Award recognizes innovative work that continues exploration in this field. William T. Newsom, chair of the Lashley Award Selection Committee, will present the award.
So the recipient of the 2018 Carl Spencer Lashley Award is Katherine Gallagher of Harvard University in recognition of her incisive studies of the molecular and circuit basis of instinctive behaviors that are mediated through the olfactory systems in the mammalian brain. Katherine Gallagher has elucidated the mechanisms by which the mammalian brain detects pheromones and processes pheromone-related information to produce social behaviors. Pheromones are molecules, typically airborne, that constitute an important and very specific mode of communication between members of the same species. This reaches the popular press and our choice of sexual mates and things like that. Dulac discovered novel families of pheromone receptors in the vomeronasal organ, so that's a little sub-specialized pathway in the mammalian brain. The olfactory system, and these discoveries led directly to her groundbreaking work on the anatomical pathways and physiological mechanisms that mediate pheromone effects in the central brain. Dulac showed how this circuitry generates sex-specific behaviors in response to pheromones, even though the circuits for both male and female specific behaviors exist in both sexes. Dulac's body of work is a brilliant example of how molecular, physiological, and behavioral techniques deployed in concert with each other can lead to a deep and mechanistically powerful understanding of behavior. Dr. Dulac is the Higgins Professor of Molecular and Cellular Biology and the Lee and Espelita Professor of Arts and Sciences at Harvard University and is an investigator of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. On behalf of the Lashley Award Committee, it is my great pleasure to present the Carl Spencer Lashley Award for pioneering work in the field of behavioral neuroscience to Dr. Katherine Gallagher. Congratulations. Thank you.
I am extremely honored to be recognized by the Lashley Award, and I would like to thank the Society, the Philosophical Society, Bill Newsom, and the member of the committee for recognizing my work. I'm also highly, highly indebted to the people who made it possible for me to reach my dream of becoming a scientist. To start with, my parents. My parents are researchers too, but in humanities, science is very far from their daily life. But I learned from them the love of knowledge, scholarship, the curiosity of the unknown. I'm greatly indebted to my teachers and mentors who unraveled for me the wonder of neuroscience and biology. And then finally, I want to thank the member of my labs that transformed very hard work into a very exciting scientific journey. Thank you very much.
In 1993, in anticipation of its 250th anniversary, of the anniversary of the American Philosophical Society, the United States Congress authorized the minting of the Thomas Jefferson Medal to honor the society and its third president. Thomas Jefferson served as president of the APS at the same time he was vice president and then president of the United States. The Thomas Jefferson Medal is the APS highest honor for distinguished achievement in the arts, humanities, or social sciences. In celebration of what's now the 275th anniversary, Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, a member of our council and of the selection committee, will present the 2018 Thomas Jefferson Medal.
I am very pleased to announce that the recipient of the Thomas Jefferson Medal for distinguished achievements in the arts, social sciences, or humanities is Toni Morrison, a towering figure in the field of American literature. Early on as a senior editor at Random House, later as a professor at Princeton University, and most notably as novelist, essayist, and cultural critic for more than 5 decades, she has enthralled readers and inspired future writers. Her novels have won her numerous honors and prizes, such as the Pulitzer Prize and the Anisfield Wolf Award, Book Award, both in 1988, the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993, and in 2012, our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Barack Obama. Her image graced the cover of Time magazine in January 1998 with the accompanying description of her as the great American storyteller. Toni Morrison is renowned for the beauty and power of her prose in capturing the African American voice from the interior life of the individual and of the group. The cumulative effect of her many writings over the decades is nothing short of remarkable. She affords her readers a vast archive of African American perspectives, emotions, and experiences, while at the same time brilliantly revealing this rich complexity as integral and indeed constitutive of the American past and present. In an interview in 1993 with Toni Morrison, she described her writing routine as a ritual that begins in the pre-dawn hours with a cup of coffee and with anticipation of seeing the sunrise. She emphasized her psychological need to encounter the darkness first, and she speaks of the process of writing and of her becoming what she called a conduit of the written word by means of a dawning day. She writes, "For me, light is the signal in the transition. It's not being in the light, it's being there before it arrives. It enables me in some sense." I believe that Toni Morrison similarly serves as such a light, as a signal of transition for all of us. By telling stories that disclose dark and difficult realities in America's racial past, she enables us to begin to address those realities with enlightened sense of the human condition and with greater appreciation of the universal striving for love and belonging, for endurance and survival, for hope and achievement, and for justice and mercy. It is my privilege to present the 2018 Thomas Jefferson Medal for Distinguished Achievement in the Arts, Sciences, or Humanities. The citation inscribed on the prize certificate reads, "To Toni Morrison, in recognition of a distinguished lifetime of extraordinary contributions to American letters, with a unique gift of language and of unbounded imagination. Toni Morrison's highly acclaimed works of fiction and nonfiction have served as reminders of the social realities of difference in American life, while serving also as timeless meditations on the human condition. Her literary genius is celebrated throughout the world. Her appeal spans the generations." Because Professor Morrison is unable to travel, she has asked her friend, Professor Farah Jasmine Griffin, to accept the medal on her behalf. Farah Griffin is the William B. Ransford Professor of English and Comparative Literature and African American Studies at Columbia University. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage to accept the Jefferson Medal for Toni Morrison.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here to accept this award in honor of Toni Morrison. I'm especially honored as a native Philadelphian to be in this part of my hometown with all of you. So, good afternoon. I'll read some remarks that Toni asked me to share with you today. Thank you, members of the American Philosophical Society, for this honor, the Thomas Jefferson Medal for Distinguished Achievement in the Arts, Humanities, and Sciences. Founded by Benjamin Franklin to promote knowledge, your mission is one of great urgency in this moment. These men, Jefferson and Franklin, two of our most revered founding fathers, were passionately committed to the pursuit of knowledge as a tool to ensure democracy. And they, especially Thomas Jefferson, understood the power of language to create and mold understanding, indeed, to create and mold reality. Jefferson used his power to give birth to a new nation, the United States of America, and a new people, Americans. Though his understanding of both was limited by his own inability to see anyone other than whites as fully human, his idea was capacious enough to expand as history and the others within demanded. Jefferson's language in the Declaration of Independence projected England's 13 colonies into a future free of British rule and made of them a nation committed to a set of principles. He did not extend the liberties he extolled to Black or indigenous inhabitants of this land, but he helped to give birth to a nation that could, when it chose to do so, aspire toward the principles he espoused. Today, we find ourselves at a juncture as significant as that Jefferson and Franklin confronted. We are faced with the task of asking yet again, who are we? What do we value? What price are we willing to pay for the future we hope to create? Will tomorrow give birth to a new freedom for all, or will it signal the death of our democratic experiment? Once again, language emboldens and enables. In the hands of a demagogue, it has transformed a band of poor refugees seeking asylum into a dangerous horde of criminals storming the gates. It has turned young people who challenge police killings of innocents into Black identity extremists, and it has made victims of powerful men accused of sexual assault. It issues forth from pulpits and pundits and is broadcast via profit-driven media outlets. I have devoted my life's work to unmasking this language and its distractions, to unearthing and creating language that aspires toward freedom from the constraints of fear and hatred. I know that on the novel's page, in a poem's imagery, in a song's lyric, even in a rap's rhyme, there awaits a language reaching for today and tomorrow, bearing witness to the truth of who we have been, who we are, and striving toward who we might yet become. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was great. Thank you. So it's now my privilege and an honor and pleasure to present our last award of the afternoon, the Benjamin Franklin Medal for Distinguished Public Service. This award also has a history. In 1906, the U.S. Congress authorized a medal to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Benjamin Franklin's birth. President Roosevelt directed that the first one go to the Republic of France. 50 copies were given to the American Philosophical Society for its use. The Society has chosen to be, as I indicated earlier, parsimonious in their distribution. For 3 decades, only one was given, to Marie Curie in 1921. Since 1937, they have been awarded more liberally, but still quite selectively, for major contributions in the sciences or in public service. The recipient selected for the Society's 2018 Benjamin Franklin Medal for Distinguished Public Service is Bryan Stevenson, founder and executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative and professor of clinical law at New York University School of Law. Bryan Stevenson dedicated his legal career to the representation of death row inmates almost immediately on his graduation from Harvard Law School in 1985. In order to carry out this work, he founded the Equal Justice Initiative, a nonprofit law firm in Alabama in 1994. His luminous memoir, Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption, a national bestseller, recounts his successes, his failures, and his ultimate embrace of society's most despised members on the common ground of what he calls, quote, the wholeness of our reciprocal humanity. A native of Delaware, Bryan Stevenson has long made his headquarters in Montgomery, Alabama, where last spring, under the auspices of the Equal Justice Initiative, he opened the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. This site is dedicated to teaching the public about the legacy of racial terror, specifically to memorialize the 4,400 Black victims of lynchings that took place in America between 1877 and 1950. Much of this history and its lessons have been lost before the initiative reclaimed it through research that is still ongoing. To quote the final words of Bryan Stevenson's remarkable book, the work continues. He turns 59 next week. The citation inscribed on the prize certificate reads, quote, in recognition of his tireless advocacy on behalf of the most vulnerable in our society, from death row inmates to minors sentenced to life without parole, his path-breaking efforts to combat racism and economic inequality in the criminal justice system as the director of the Equal Justice Initiative, his commitment to advancing the cause of truth and reconciliation by carefully documenting this nation's history of racial terror and lynching as the founder of the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, and his dedication to educating and inspiring a new generation of lawyers as a professor of clinical law at NYU. The American Philosophical Society honors Bryan Stevenson, a drum major for justice and mercy. It is my honor to present the 2018 Benjamin Franklin Medal for Distinguished Public Service to Bryan Stevenson.
Well, thank you so much. It's nearly impossible to say anything with the extraordinary words of Toni Morrison still echoing in this room. That was amazing. I'm so grateful to be here. When we opened up our memorial, Ms. Morrison was kind enough to allow us to use some of her incredible words from Beloved, which are engraved on the walls. And it's an extraordinary honor for me to be in a place like this with this extraordinary entity, the American Philosophical Society, and to be recognized in this way. It actually brings to mind my grandmother, who I talk about a lot. My grandmother was the daughter of people who were enslaved, and she was the very definition of old school. She was tough and she was strong, but she was kind and she was loving. And she moved to Philadelphia. She was part of that exodus from the American South, those refugees who came to the north and lived in Germantown at the end of her life. And I would come up here sometimes and visit her. And she was very strict. And she gave me very clear directions about when I had to be back if I left her home. And I was always careful to get back on time. But one time I came back and my grandmother was a little unhappy with me, and I didn't understand why, because I got there right before my curfew and my deadline. And she brought me into the kitchen, which was where she had all of the serious, difficult conversations. And she sat me down, and she said, and I said, Mama, I got here on time. I don't know why you're upset. She says, I'm upset because I saw you coming down the street, and you were with those boys that I don't know. You were with people I'm not sure about. And she said, you're too young to appreciate this, but you need to know that people will judge you by the company you keep. So you have to be thoughtful about that. And my grandmother was wise about so many things. And my biggest regret today is that my grandmother is no longer alive, because if she was here, I would want to say to her, Mama, look at the company I'm keeping today. And I truly do hope I get judged that way. Thank you so much for this recognition.